Japan is one of those countries that I have wanted to visit ever since I was a child. I'm from Europe, so Japan and many other places have always seemed so far and so out of reach. But that dream finally came true, as I finally booked my trip and went to the other side of the world, to a country that felt so very different from what I've been used to, in the best possible way. Since it's unsurprisingly very difficult to get people to just go to the other side of the world with you, at least in my friends and family, I decided to do the reasonable choice any 20-year-old would do and go there by myself for 2 weeks. If that Poland trip I did all alone was a test on my survival skills in another country, this would be the final exam. Welcome to my Japan vlog. Grab some snacks and take a very good position. Everything ready? Good. My trip to the land of the rising sun began on a Tuesday night, and I've never seen the airport this empty. The whole place was like ghost town. My flight was delayed by about an hour and a half, which really made me anxious because I would have to transfer flights at Nagoya, and I knew I wouldn't have a whole lot of time to do that, so let's just say that I was pretty damn scared at this time. This was my first time on the side of the airport where the long distance flights departed from, and yeah, it was really weird, like it felt like being in a whole new airport. This flight I was also really damn scared of. Not because I'd be scared of flying, but because this was a 12-hour flight. I don't know if I've mentioned this previously, but I cannot sleep on a plane, car, train, anything. No matter how hard I try, I just cannot. So I knew I would have to spend that whole flight awake. And yeah, this flight departed in the middle of the night, so I had not slept before I got onto the plane. And yeah, let's just say that this flight was miserable. I spent the flight mostly listening to music, watching movies and TV shows, playing Uno against bots, and just attempting to sleep despite knowing it wouldn't work. And well, it didn't, surprisingly. So when I finally landed at Nagoya, after what felt like an eternity, I was sleep deprived, jet lagged, had brain fog, and I was on an airport on the other side of the world where I didn't have any idea what I should really do to complete the immigration process. I didn't know where my transfer flight to Tokyo was gonna depart from. My luggage took an awful lot of time to get out of the plane, which I then had to take and register for my next flight, and I had less than an hour to do all this. Yeah, I was already planning a bullet train to Tokyo. I really did not believe I would make it in time. But alas, miracles do happen sometimes, and somehow, I still don't really know how, but I made it to the transfer flight. I was pretty surprised to say the least, but I was glad I didn't have to pay extra $70 for a Shinkansen. Here you can see the lovely city of Tokyo. In fact, it is the biggest city in the world. Seeing the city as the plane was landing was pretty magical. The thought of having the next 2 weeks to explore this massive city by myself was scary yet incredible. I almost even forgot that I had spent way over 24 hours awake, and the tiredness left my body as we were about to land. The time had finally arrived. The first few things any foreigner coming to Japan should do are the following. First of all, you really want to get a Suica card or some other alternative. This will make using public transport 10 times easier. You also want a SIM card or some other way to give yourself an internet connection. I got a SIM card, but unfortunately that had to wait for the next day, because I couldn't for the life of me find one at the domestic arrival flights terminal where I landed, since it was already very late in Japan as well. Oh and yeah, prepare some cash as well. At least the Suica card cannot be charged with a credit card, which, to be honest, I have no idea why this is, but it just is, and you have to deal with that. It took about an hour by public transport to get to my hotel, which was located in Ikebukuro. Now it is time for a room reveal. It's very late, so I'm speaking quietly. Finally got here. What a long fucking day. What a long day behind, honestly. This is the view. Wow, it's very crazy. Yeah, it's a very small room, but that doesn't matter because I'm only here to sleep. There is an air conditioner. Thank God, it's hot as fuck in here. And let's see the toilet. That's not because it doesn't open. Oh, okay. Oh my god, I have a bathtub. What the fuck? Very nice. When I finally got to my hotel room, I was pretty damn exhausted. But then I was hit with horrible realization. I was hungry as fuck. So I made the choice to go out at like 2 AM to find something to eat. This was a very comfortable nightly walk, and going to a konbini for the first time really just felt weird. Everything in Japan just feels different than in Europe. I don't really know how to explain it. After this short walk, I got back to the hotel and took a very deserved night's sleep.
Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m. right now, which means that it's like 3 a.m. back in Finland. But yes, today is Thursday, and we are heading to buy a SIM card first, and then I'm gonna do something. But yeah, it wasn't a dream. I'm actually in Japan. What the fuck, dude? That's crazy. Yeah.
The next morning I was less tired than I had expected. I did sleep pretty well actually, but naturally that was because I had been awake for such a long time. Japan is 6 hours ahead of Finland, and at the time I thought that adapting to its time zone would be easy. Well, I found out the next night, but we'll get there when we get there. This day I started out by just exploring Ikebukuro, the area I was staying in. I for some reason expected this to be a smaller area, but it was on this day that I found out it's actually one of the biggest areas in Tokyo. No complaints there. I never felt like I was in any kind of danger, so that's good. The amount of people in Tokyo is utterly insane for someone who lives in a country with 5.5 million people, but I did get used to it. I mean, you kinda have to. My first destination was a mall called Sunshine City. I thought it would be a great starting point since it was close to my hotel, and I didn't know how jet-lagged I would be when I was planning this trip. Well, would you look at that? I ran into a Mugiwara store, which actually was like a jump scare. I had no idea there would be a store like this in here, and I'm a massive fan of One Piece, so it was a surreal feeling to walk around the store. I didn't end up buying anything since it was pretty expensive, but for the experience, this still puts a smile on my face when I think about it. Having the nerd side of my brain activated by the Mugiwara store, I decided that my next destination would be Akihabara. This area is known for being the nerdiest area in Tokyo. It's filled to the brim with all kinds of stores selling everything from figurines to comics to video games and technology. I already said that Japan is a surreal place for a Westerner to visit for the first time, but never have I experienced this kind of surreal feeling before I went to Akiba for the first time. This place is insane, and I spent too much time scouring through these stores just admiring everything. Do you know which absolutely perfect anime takes place in Akihabara? That would be Steins Gate, one of my personal favorites. And I knew full well that it takes place here, and I was wondering if I could see some of the locations from that show. So here's a few. The entrance to the Akihabara train station, Akiba Shrine that was unfortunately closed when I got there, and the most hilarious of them all, the Maid Cafe where some of the scenes of the show take place in. This place is actually real, and when I found that out while googling for things to do here, I knew I couldn't miss this opportunity. They were pretty strict when it came to filming inside the place, so I don't have much footage, but let's just say that the experience was interesting. Did I pay too much for this kurisu drink that didn't even taste that good? Yes, I did, but do I regret it? Not for a second. They had all sorts of Steins Gate themed decorations and they were playing music from the show. What more can you really ask for? The rest of the day I spent shopping in Akihabara and then eventually returned to Ikebukuro and went to sleep. However, it was now that the jet lag hit me, and it hit me hard. I slept for about 2 hours, after which I could not sleep at all. My brain was very clearly still in Finnish time, and oh boy, that would lead to another day of being extremely tired. But it is what it is. On the second day, despite being totally wrecked by that horrible night's sleep, I wouldn't let that stop me. While that modern side of Japan is really fascinating to me as well, I also really wanted to see some of the older stuff. So naturally, it was time to check out some temples. This first Buddhist temple was actually quite far away from the center of the city, but it had a very cool feeling to it because there were pretty much no tourists around, and all of the text in the signs were exclusively in Japanese, so it was a little difficult for me to navigate, but to be outside of those tourist areas was very nice. There was also this Chinese little alleyway here, or at least I think this is Chinese stuff. I hope I'm not completely wrong, but yeah, it was interesting. Although I will admit, this area had pretty much nothing interesting besides the temple area. It was also a very hot day, and I was super worn out and sweaty, so I decided to return to the hotel for at least a little shower. I had planned to go check out Shinjuku on this day, but when I was going to the train station, it was so incredibly full of people because it was a Friday evening that I just decided to ditch the idea and do that the next day. The next morning, while on my way to the train station, I fell into the biggest scam I had encountered in Japan. The claw machines. These motherfuckers were everywhere. There were so many of these buildings dedicated exclusively to claw machines. They literally had multiple floors of these things, and of course, me being naive and stupid, I decided to start playing some. And as you can see here, it started out pretty well. I got this Gear 5 Luffy figure on my second try. Then I saw this figure of Trafalgar Law, one of my favorite One Piece characters, and of course I had to try my luck. I'll just speed up this footage. Let's just say that getting one of these bigger figures from a machine like this is infinitely more difficult than the small ones. This footage tells more than 1,000 words. I did eventually get it, but I could have saved so much money by just buying it. Well, lesson learned, I didn't touch a claw machine ever again, or so I would like to say. Well, I finally made it to Shinjuku, one of the busiest and biggest areas of Tokyo. Especially on a Saturday, this place was pretty damn crowded. Well, what's better than to have a nice relaxing walk in a national garden located in the middle of all the buzz of the world's largest city. This place is Shinjuku Gyoen. I must have butchered that name, I'm so sorry. Going from all of those crowds to this relaxing beautiful park was so nice. I sat there for quite a while just relaxing and admiring the views. They've really kept this place nice and clean, despite having thousands of visitors every day. Even though the park was absolutely gorgeous, I wasn't the biggest fan of Shinjuku. I don't know, to me all it had going for it was the park and nothing else. I found other areas of the city way more fascinating than this one. Speaking of which, welcome to Shibuya. A much more comfortable and nice area than Shinjuku, at least in my opinion. It's not to say that Shibuya doesn't have a lot of people in it, quite the opposite actually, it's also one of the biggest areas in the city. But I don't know, the feeling it had was just way more exciting than Shinjuku, and I can't really explain why. I wonder what this place is. Oh, hi Luffy. Turns out I've run into another Mugiwara store, this time in Shibuya. Okay, unlike the one in Ikebukuro, I knew about this one's existence, and I had to check it out, of course I did. For some reason they didn't allow me to film from the inside of the store, only on the outside. It was weird, but the store was actually nicer than the one I had checked out previously. There were more interesting things being sold, and these statues of Luffy, Chopper and Shanks at the entrance were just amazing. This is where I fell for the claw machine scam again. Let me tell you the story while you watch this beautiful Shibuya footage. So inside the store, there was a claw machine that worked a bit differently than the ones I had seen before. Basically, instead of figurines being inside of the machine, there were these balls that were way easier to catch, and if you won, you just had to ask an employee to give you your prize. That's why I decided to try my luck and see if I can pull it off. Well, for the price of only 100 yen, I got the Luffy figure on my first try. Yes, a proper one. So even if I fell for the claw machine scam, at least in the end, I scammed the scammer. Here's another funny story that happened while I was in a conveyor belt sushi restaurant in Shibuya. Sadly, I don't have much footage from the place aside from this clip, so I'll let you admire more of Shibuya. So this was my first time in a conveyor belt sushi place, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was just given a seat and told that I would be able to order stuff from the tablet that was on my place. But of course, trying to change the language from Japanese to English proved to be too difficult for me. I just didn't for the life of me see an option to do it, or well, maybe I did but it was in Japanese and there were no indicators, so yeah, I was already getting myself ready to just order completely random things without knowing what I was going to get. In this dire situation, I was rescued by a savior angel. What the fuck was I thinking when I wrote this script? Like, what the fuck? Anyway, there was thankfully a really nice lady sitting next to me who helped a dumbass Finnish man to change the language of the tablet. We actually ended up chatting a bit, and without spoiling anything, I can say that she will be back in part 2 of my Japan trip video duology, so stay tuned for that. After this, I felt like going to a bar to have a drink, so I started looking for one on Google, and I found it. Or well, I was searching for it, and it took me a long time to find it. So this was funny. Imagine me inside a building looking for this bar that I knew was there and it was supposed to be on the very floor I was on, but I just cannot see it anywhere. All of a sudden, a fucking vending machine that was on the wall starts moving and people walk out from behind it. This is when I realized that the bar was hidden behind the vending machine. I wish I would have filmed this shit because it was hilarious, so I'll see if I can find some footage online. And yeah, since I'm a professional vlogger, this is the only clip I managed to get from the place. But hey, the drink was good, whatever it was. The nighttime had arrived, and I knew that before I left Shibuya, there was one thing I had to see. Some of you can probably guess what it is. Of course, it is the Shibuya crossing, the most busy crossroads in the world. And while that doesn't sound that interesting by itself, seeing it in person and walking through it is something else. I think these clips are even able to convey it somewhat well. It is a surreal feeling being surrounded by so many billboards and crowds. What a fucking place. That was one hell of a day. The next day I needed some nature in my life, so I took my way to Ueno, where I visited the Ueno Park. This place again was so nice, very different from Shinjuku-gyoen, felt even more touristy, but still a nice experience to chill out after that previous day. This place was filled to the brim with life, small torii gates, shrines and temple buildings. It was actually way bigger of a place than I had thought, and I managed to spend a good few hours there, although it was extremely hot again. Hot weather was one of the core themes of this trip apparently, and despite being horrible on this day, it would get a shit ton worse. The next destination after Ueno was Asakusa, where I had planned to check out the Senjoji Temple. This is honestly one of the coolest temples in Tokyo. It was filled to the brim with people, but regardless, this place is great. Please visit it if you come to Tokyo, it's really nice. There was also this alleyway filled with different stores and street food places. I didn't try any, but these are very popular spots, so maybe you should try them if you ever go there. This day really was just going from place to place pretty fast, so next up I found myself in Ginza, which is a rich area in Tokyo filled with luxury brand shopping opportunities and whatnot. Honestly, not my type of a place at all, but I still wanted to see it, and this clock tower was pretty cool and apparently it's iconic, so I guess it was nice to check it out. Oh look, doesn't this look familiar? I decided to go back to Akihabara for the evening. What a surprise. This building here is called the Radio Kaikan, which is one of, if not the biggest anime, video games and technology focused building in all of Japan. There's 10 floors filled with a bunch of stores where you can just find pretty much anything if you're a nerd like me. Check it out, it's pretty crazy. The whole day had been pretty crazy and I really had to sleep well now, because the next day would probably be even crazier. It was time for my first trip outside of Tokyo. The destination was Hakone, a town to the west of Tokyo, and a place where people go to enjoy nature and try to have a look at Mount Fuji. That was also a goal I had in mind, but unfortunately the weather and my lack of understanding where the hell I needed to go to see it ruined my plan. But at least this place was insanely beautiful. After stopping and doing some googling, I found out that Hakone wasn't a small place at all. Apparently the place where you had the best chance to see Fuji was about 3 hours by foot from the station, so since I love walking, I decided I would walk there. I cancelled this plan after about half an hour. This was one of the hottest days on my trip, and holy fucking shit, I cannot even describe how this weather felt. Guys, I'm Finnish. I'm not used to fucking 38 degrees Celsius, I cannot handle that. So I ended up taking a train. This train was easily the slowest train I had been on in Japan, but it makes sense considering it was going up pretty high in the hills. The views were really nice though, and they even had air conditioning, thank god for that. Having arrived at Odawara, the last station this train went to, I decided to take a stroll down these very steep stairs. I knew full well I would have to walk them up as well, but more on that later. I ended up finding a konbini in order to get some food. The reason I simply didn't go to a restaurant was that in Japan, and especially in a place like this, it is absolutely not guaranteed that they speak English or have English menus. Since I didn't see any restaurants that had anything written in English, I thought it would just be easier to go to a konbini. Thankfully, the convenience stores in Japan are actually very nice and you can get some actual food from them, Bitches, very nice. Then it was time to go back up the stairs, and none of these clips I filmed do any justice to how steep and long these motherfuckers were. Doing cardio in a weather like this was one of the most miserable things I've ever done, but at least I can say I did it. I walked around the place for some time, and there were these gondola lifts that would have taken me even higher, but I didn't realize they would stop running at a certain time, which is why I couldn't go there, which is very unfortunate. Well, no can do other than to get back on the train and head back down. Once again, I cannot emphasize enough how beautiful the views are. Just look at this. Goddamn. I know we've just started to gain some momentum on this video, but I will have to cut this short. There's simply so many things that I did and filmed, and I cannot possibly fit them in one video. So at the time of this video coming out, I'm already hard at work on part 2, in which we'll be taking a look at New York, fireworks, a tsunami warning? What the hell, that's crazy. All of that and much more coming in part 2, hopefully in the near future. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.